Okay, we're going to try to summarize some points here. We didn't really get to talk about Sif Daled. Did we get through Sif Daled last week? I'm trying to remember if we.
Not in the cheer, but through learning we did.
So let's just talk about a few points in Sif Daled before we go any further. So there's some important points here. So first of all, the Beis Yosef has an arichos in Das Rashi. It says basically two chidushim. One is if it gets to Makar ben Rasoi, even if it's still Rasayach, if you are mavashlet more, you bring it from Makar ben Rasoi to Mavushal Sarkoi, then it's considered a real. It's a chiyuv bishul. It's a real malacha. So that's a shiloh in the Rush and other shonim, but in Rashi he says clearly that bishul from Makar ben Rasoi, even though that's some Rishonim hold that that's enough to be Mavushal Sarkoi. Anything past that is just a Tosefes bishul, and maybe it might be usher to do it midrabanan, but it's no longer an issa d'oraisa because it's already royal achila. So, so that the shir makam d'soy is the full shir when it comes to the d'oraisa. It's interesting that I've seen Rav Shlomo Zalman in certain places talk about that this is Rav Shlomo Zalman's godless, that he extrapolates things, he teaches us how to extrapolate things, and that the Gabi Melechas kosher of all things. So I'm tying a knot. So he's there talking about a shaila of if you have, let's say, you tie a knot in your shoe, there's a knot wherever the knot is, and it is a knot, but it's a little bit loose. It's not fully tight. So it will do the job, sort of. It'll pretty much do the job in most cases, unless somebody really pulls the thing apart really hard. But in most cases, it would work. So he says that's totally on whether or not Mechal ben Rasoi is at the Sof Malacha or not. If you hold like the Rishonim that Mechal ben Rasoi past that is no longer a bishul, so huadin, if once the knot gets to the point that it's usable, just not at its full strength, so then also it would be considered. That would be the full melechas kosher. Anything past that would be at the most rabbanon. It wouldn't be a malacha anymore. But if you hold that there's still bishul from Mechal ben Rasoi a bishul called sarkoi, then it would still be isser midaraisa to tie that knot. So he's looking at it's not just a question of bishul; it's a musag in Hilchos Shabbos that we learned from without speaking this out. But you see that he learned it that it's like a binyan av and a concept in Hilchos Shabbos that you get to a certain point, then it's then the malacha is nigmar, and anything past that is tosefes, but it's not really the malacha itself. So fascinating, side point in Rosh Hashanah. But anyway, the Beises Machiach, the Rashi is of those shitas who holds that there is a full malacha after Makam ben Rasoi, and that's even if it's still Rasayach. It never cooled down. Let's say you have a liquid that got to Makam ben Rasoi and it never really cooled down. To continue that heating is going to be in Issa D'Oraisa, Shab and Issa D'Oraisa, which we'll see Nafkamidas also later on in Sif and other upcoming Sifim in this. And number two, he holds that according to Rashi, even if it was Mavushal cold sarkoid by a liquid and then it cooled down, there's also an Issa Bishul Midaraisa, which would be not like Shutas or Rashba and others that all the ones that there's no Bishul Achar, Bishul, even Balach, once it cools down, Rashi is not that way. And the Beis Yosef Marach in that he has a back and forth about the rush, but the Maskana he ends off with the rush also. He holds like Rashi in this Nakuda that Pas Makam ben Rasoi and Stan are both. He clears about the rush in that, but we see from the Torah that the Torah takes on both halachas like Rashi, so it must be that the Torah learned shot in the rush that way as well. And so that's the maskana, and that will be the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. We'll see in a few minutes. Now, when it comes to also this din of bishul achar bishul balach, if it was in stanin, so he brings also the smak like this in Rashi, and also that it's Rebbeinu Yerucham and Rebbeinu Yonah. Just one chiddush in Rebbeinu Yonah that will be discussed. It'll be also the lashon of Shulchan Aruch later on in Sif. Ches is that according to Rebbeinu Yonah, if it is nitztanin, it's only going to be an isser to heat it back up again if it was already cooked and cooled down, it would only be an isser to reheat it, even though it's a liquid, if it's mistamik v'yafalo. If it's mistamik rala, there's no such isser. So Mishnah Berurah here speaks about that by Richason. He takes on, we pass him not that way, that it's going to be also, even if it's a stomach baralo, just the very fact that it was a liquid that gets heated back up again, that becomes a malacha. And later on in Sif Ches, when the Shulchan Aruch quotes that lashon as well, that it's only if it's mistamach v'yafalo. So Mishnah Berurah says that over there in Sif Ches, that he's only mentioning it because that is the shita of Rabbeinu Yerucham, like Rabbeinu Yonah, and the Shulchan Aruch over there happens to be quoting the lashon of Rabbeinu Yerucham for that whole halacha, but he's Megala, a new Yisod in Shulchan Aruch. It's a very important Mishnah Berurah there in Sif Ches, that there are times that the Shulchan Aruch might say a halacha because he's quoting a shita of Rishonim, and he's mainly going with that halacha of the Rishon, even though he might not hold like every prop of that Rishon, even the ones that he quotes. So the fact that he quotes the Indian Mistamach Yafalo and Sif Ches is not lav dafka arayah that Shulchan Aruch, but the passages that way. Perhaps he passes like Rov Poskim back here in Sif Daled, that even if it's Mistamach Baralo, it's still an Isser Gomor if it was Lach Shenistanen and you heat it back up again. Is that clear? Am I making myself clear? That was a lot of fast information. Any questions about that, or before I go on? The bottom line, just to sum up, despite the lashon of Shulchan Aruch Sif Ches mashma not that way, the Mishnah Berurah is paskening like most Rishonim that hold that lach shenistanen, if you heat it back up again, it's a malacha of bishul. But we will find times though the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, when we talk about like about tea in a minute and other things, that's the din l'chatchila, because we have to be choshesh for those shitas. The b'diavad, even according to like Rabbi Huda, the paskins, that b'diavad, if you cook b'shogeg, it's usher for the person himself, and shasat chak we pass like a mayor. But let's say a person, it's not a shasat chak, and a person took a liquid and that it cooled down, and you poured it into a kli rishon and heated it up, or even put it on the fire and heated it up. So what would be the din b'diavad, would be able to eat that food or not, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's not a shasat chak, which would be somach on a mayor, because obviously he didn't do it on purpose, he did it by accident, he didn't realize it's a problem. So what will be the halacha? So there, Mishnah Berurah says from the Pri Megadim, like often we say, that when it comes to the isra of hana from something was special, so we always, if we have a shita to be samachan, so the isra hana is only an isra d'Rabbanan. The isra to do it is an isra d'Oraisa. To obviously it's an isra of bishul on Shabbos, it's an isra d'Oraisa. But if it was this bashal to be nene from what was this bashal on Shabbos, that's only an isra d'Rabbanan. So since you have a machlokas and you have shitas that hold that even lach shenistanen is there's no isra to heat it up again, because ein bishul lach bishul belies even to lach, like the Rashba and other Rishonim. Since you have those Rishonim to be samachan, so b'diavad by the shale isra d'Rabbanan, can I be nene from it or not? Then we can be samachan those Rishonim, safek d'Rabbanan lakula. Okay. So is that clear again? So make sure that these are important ideas. Make sure they're clear. Okay. Another point here. Yes. And the Maggid Mishnah brings another tziruf that we'll have. We're not passing it that way, but it'll be another tziruf l'kula as well, which we spoke about this in the last bechina. Like what will be if you go to somebody's house on Shabbos, and you find that they didn't know better and they cooked the food. So one of the right answers was that if the food was already cooked on Mechem ben Risoy, then it's not a problem. There's no longer an isser on it. Even though we paskin that there is, like they said, paskin like Rashi and the Satur and the Shulchan Aruch, that even past Mechem ben Risoy till Muvshik and Sarko, there is an isser bishul. We're machmer that way. But since there is, the Maggid Mishnah says, B'Shem the Rashba, as well. There's a second kula of the Rashba. The Rashba is makel when it comes to sonen by lach, that there's no issur to heat it up because ain bishul achar bishul, and the Rashba is makel to say that once it hits machar b'nesoy, there's no longer an issur bishul as well. There's no longer the issur bishul is only up to machar b'nesoy. So again, b'diavad, if somebody cooks something, and even if it's not shas tzchak, they cooked it when it was already b'vishul machar b'nesoy. So then b'diavad we say that we can be somewhat on those Rishonim like the Rashba and the Maggid Mishnah that wasn't bishul anymore and could be nana from it. Okay. Yeah, then this other halacha of the Rashba that even if it's stanin, the nafkamina will be like if the Rashba holds that it's lach and stanin, there's no isser bishul, will be the nafkamina in that because the we can't put something on the fire anyway, and we can't stop put things on the fire. So the Mishnah Berurah later on in Mishnah Berurah, it says enough community in the Rashba will be putting a keneged a medura. You put a keneged a medura where there's no isser of shia v'chazara on when it's just adjacent to let's say a bonfire or whatever, or the whatever fire in the house, the chimney. So you put it there to heat up. That's okay because there's no isser of shia v'chazara over there. And the way we're going to see later on also coming up, that if you put something on top of a pot, on top of the fire, which the Lashon Shulchan Aruch is, and that's the Chazon Ish we spoke about back in Shia Chazar held that's not considered on the fire, it's considered keneged a medura also, because it's not the derek bishul b'kach at all, so they weren't gozer Shia Chazar on putting something on top of another pot that's already cooking on there. So that'd be enough community on the Rashba to say that even if it's a stanin, you're allowed to put it up there. So again, we don't hold that way. That's also the das of the Ran, as a matter of fact, that the Ran holds from the din of kol sheba b'chamin be'erev Shabbos sharosa b'chamin b'Shabbos is even keneged medura, and that it's even by lach. So so we have important shitas here, the Rashba and the Ran, the Maggid Mishnah, the Rashba and the Ran, all holding that there is no bishul achar bishul by lach. So like we say, we're machmer with that. We're machmer like the shitas that it is, like Rashi. But b'diavad we have what to be samachan if somebody did it. Okay. Now the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah. So just the question will be just to clarify one more thing is that what does it mean it's stanin? So we spoke about this once before, and we're going to see it more. It was here the Mishnah Berurah speaks that out a little bit, the Ramah, and it's going to be more refreshed in Sif Tesvav. It's come up a number of times also in Rishon and Gimel that the definition of an itztanin depends. It's machlokas, the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. According to the Shulchan Aruch, itztanin means if it went to less than Yatz Letesbo, and it's already considered itztanin. And according to the Ramah, as long as it still has a zecher, it's still warm. It's still warmth of the original bishul in it, even though it's less than Yatz Letesbo, then there's no longer a problem of heating it back up again. It's not considered a stanin. So this is a tremendous nafkamina between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, halacha l'maisa. For Sephardim, if it went down below Yatz Letesbo, you can no longer heat it up again. And we'll see in a minute. There's big major ramifications for that, besides the obvious one that you just can't heat it back up. But like, let's say you want to put water in the cholent. You want to add water to the cholent. You see it's getting dry. So the only way you could do that, as we learned in Rishon Gimel, as far as the cholent is concerned, is that it was gar for katzam. Otherwise, you can't put it back in again. So you have to have layers of aluminum foil there. And if you don't, you can take it out, but you could add the aluminum foil even on Shabbos. You're allowed to make gar for katzam even on Shabbos. But if it's not gar for katzam, you can't put it back. Al-Kopanim, but you want to add. So let's say as far as that goes, it's all set up, and you want to add water to the cholent. So there's actually there's in the Beis Yosef spoken out, and there's going to be a problem. According to Sephardim, it's going to be a big problem. What's going to be the Eitzah? Because by Ashkenazim, really that's not an issue, because as long as it stays, you put it in, took the cholent pot off, and like we mentioned once before, you probably don't have enough hands to keep a hand in the shalom pot and have the other hand stretched across the other side of the kitchen to get water out of the urn with the other hand. So you're not going to leave your hand on the pot all the time. You're not going to be shy unless you have someone else in the room with you. But when it's early in the morning before shul, you're the only one there. You make sure the shul doesn't burn. So you have so you put it on the counter with das to put it back on again, because that's the situation. You can't do any better than that. And then you go get the cup of water from the other side, from the urn, and you're going to come back to pour it in, and then you're going to put it back on the fire. Once you stir it in and put it back on. So that works for Ashkenazim. With the Sephardim, it's a big question, because the Rabbeinu Yonah, which is mentioned in the Torah, the Rabbeinu Yonah, and that holds that, which probably is a definition of the Mechaber that has to be Raseach. The definition of Raseach means that Raseach is Mavashal. When you put the water into this cup, now it becomes in a klisheni. We say Mikra Din, klisheni ain't a Mavashal. For most things, it's not Mavashal. So when you put it in the klisheni, it lost its koach habishal. It might still be very hot, but since it's in a klisheni, the koach habishal is b'tziruf the walls of the pot as well. And now you lost the walls of the pot, and so you don't have that koach habishal anymore. It's now in a second level kli. So to pour it into the shalom pot and put it back on the fire, then you might be mevashal water that's already cooled down. So again, for Ashkenazim, it's not a problem because it's obviously still warm enough. But for Sephardim, that has to be raseach. So it's a machlokas what raseach means. It's just the temperature of the water, or it has to have a koach harisichus that can still be mevashal. And so that's, I'm not sure what the anhaga of Sephardim is because of that, because that is an issue. It's a fascinating issue that's like a new definition to what hot means. Hot means not only hot on its own right for you to eat it or drink it, but hot for liquids has to be hot enough according to Rabbeinu Yonah to be able to cook like it did when it was really hot. Now, getting back to the Shita of the Ramah, there's two ways of understanding the Ramah, which we'll just mention it now as a Hakira, but we'll talk more detail when we get to Sif Tesvav and Hashem, when that's really the place for it. Once we're on the subject, I just want to mention here that there's a elemental Hakira, and it turns out to be a machlokas Gedolei Poskim on this question. That what is the Pashup shot in the Ramah? The Ramah holds not like it's not the stan as long as it's still warm. Which is the Ramah saying a kula or is saying a chumrah? Meaning, what does the Ramah hold like? Does the Ramah, to say this din of it's enough to be warm, it doesn't have to be raseach, does he hold like the shitas that yesh bishal achar bishal balach? If in other words, if it cooled down, there would be like shitas Rashi. It's possible like Rashi in the Torah that if it would really cool down, there would be an Isser Bishul. So he's saying a kula that even though there would be real Bishul, it's not considered cool down yet, as long as there's still a hargasha of the original Bishul in it. By Dabar Yavesh, then the fact that it was a raw piece of chicken, now it's a cooked piece of chicken, is still cooked whether it's hot or cold. So the koach habishul is going to be nicker in it very strongly, whether it is hot or cold. Many people enjoy eating a cold piece of chicken, pull out of the fridge, eat cold chicken. It's still totally cooked and good. So so that's why ein bishul achar bishul, because it's a totally cooked thing, even when it's cold. Even if it cooled down, you can heat it back up again. Mashenke and liquids, if it totally cooled down again, there's no koach bishul. The fact that it was in history once a bishul, then that doesn't make it mevushal now. At least that's how we're poskening. I'll never forget. I was once when I was a newly married in Eretz Yisrael. I was by Sikra Shlevsky, and there's an Israeli there, one of these real sharp kind of guys, and so there was a water pot in there. There was like a little kitchen there that the guy came down and said, "Did the water boil?" So I said, "I know it did." He said in a typical Israeli fashion, "I know shel chashela b'historia, and shel chaz mizavoteach." It wasn't a history lesson over here. I want to know if it's really sad, but that's how we're poskening. That that stuff from the Israeli. So that's how we're posting it. That the fact that it was historically once cooked doesn't tell me anything about what it is now. But the Ramah, and if it's not cooked and you heat it up, you'd be chayav b'shu bishul according to the Ramah. If you hold like Rashi, and if in that side, the Ramah is saying a tremendous kula that it's still called that the hecker that it was bushel still remains in it as long as it's still warm. And that's really the machlokas, the machaber and the Ramah. They both hold that if it really cooled down, it'll be an iser bishul. Just the question is, what's called cool down? That's, and the Ramah is saying a kula in that. Or the other way to understand the Ramah, this is the way the Chazon Ish understands it, is that according to the Ramah really paskins, in order to say this thing of just being warm, the Chazon Ish holds the Ramah would not be able to say that if he really held yesh bishul achar bishul by lach, if it really cooled down. To say warm, he would never say such a thing. You would have to go to like the Machaber. The only room to say such a thing, it's really a chumrah in, he really holds like the Rashba, really paskins like the Rashba that ain't bishul achar bishul balach. Once it was cooked in history, yes, history matters. It was cooked once, for some reason it stays cooked, even though it's cooled down and it's liquid. But it's a chumrah because people don't want to make a mistake and cook things that weren't never cooked at all, because once the water cooled down, you can't really tell that it was cooked. The normal person can't tell, even though there's some magical thing that remains in it. So people will think that I can cook up uncooked things on Shabbos. So therefore, the Ramah required the chumrah that it should at least still be warm from the Mishnah Bishul, not to make that mistake that you could think from here, extrapolate that I could cook things on Shabbos that were never cooked at all. So according to this Havana, the Ramah is saying a chumrah that has to be warm, and that's why the Machaber Ramah are two different sides, two different worlds. It's not like they're the same world, and one says this and one says that. There are two different worlds. The Machaber is paskening yesh bishul achar bishul balach. Therefore, if it wasn't roseach, then you lost it. And the Ramah holds no yesh ein bishul achar bishul balach. But the chumrah, we're saying it has to still be warm, which in a way makes it more understood. But these are two sides of the coin, and understand the Ramah. We'll see what the Mishnah Berurah says in a little bit about this. Okay. And this other point we mentioned before, that the Beis Yosef, that's where they mentioned Shita of the Rebbeinu Yonah, that the only time it's usher to heat up liquid that cool down is only if it's mistamach yafalo, but it's mistamach varalo, so there's no iser bishul by it. So, and the Taz actually brings this down, but the Mishnah Berurah in Chavches paskins from the Bach and the Gra that they were not machalik in that we just look at all liquid as the same, whether or not it's mistamach yafalo or ralo. It's be'etzim always mistamach yafalo to heat it up, and there's no such chiluk. Another psak of the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, we already mentioned that. Let's keep on going. Oh, now, yeah. So another important point to clarify is that when we say that we talk about lach, what is the definition of lach? Does that have to be all lach, or does it have to be lafuke? In order to not be lach, does it have to be completely yavesh? So let's say you have meat with a little bit of gravy. So what's the din of that? So the Mishnah Berurah says in Sivkat Lamed Beis that Shulchan Aruch says that Aval Davrish in his Bashal Kfar V'hu Yavesh, it is dry. Mishnah Berurah says Ratzalamar Sheiriku Hamarak Mimenu. They emptied out all the marak, all the juice from it, the soup or the juice from it. So that's mashma from there that the only way that it's considered yavesh is if it's completely emptied out, but it's a little bit there, even a little bit of liquid there, it's still considered liquid, because even though it's ruboy dry, but there's no din rove over here, and that's also the Shulchan Aruch Harab passes this way as well. In Sifkat and Yud Aleph, you need the Yavish Lagamre. If it's not Yavish Lagamre, and they're saying this, there's a Minchas Kohen that holds you go by rove, you go by rubo. So, and Ramosha asks in the Tshuva, this daya that holds that goes by rove is tamua. It's a pella. How can you say it goes by rove? So, of course, as long as there is liquid there that's in it, so okay, fine, you have rove meat. But the fact that there is some liquid, so you should always be chayav out of that liquid. And so he has a big tmi on that, and especially it's a pella to him. How could on those poskim that want to poskim like this Minchas Kohen, how could they paskin that way? It's connected this for. How could they? What's inside the paskin that way? So Moshe says a chiddush here, a very beautiful chiddush. He wants to say that you have to say that pshat in the Minchas Kohen that you go by rove he must be that he holds really like the Ramah, the ein bishul achar bishul balach at all, and just more machmir that like the Ramah has to be warm. The maker din ein bishul achar bishul balach, and we're only machmir not to. So if you hold maker din not ein bishul achar bishul balach, so the chumras that will say it has to be warm, etc., would only be if it's rubo lach. If it's rubo yavesh, rubo a double yavesh, then it's mistaber to say that since whatever liquid there is there, the really mikra din, there is no bishul by it. So it makes sense to say we can go achar harov. That's what Moshe in the Tshuva wants to say. Shot in this Minchas Kohen in this other shita. He says, however, since sof kol sof we paskin that there is bishul achar, we paskin not like that. We paskin yesh bishul achar bishul balach if it cooled down completely, and that's the way he's learning shot in the Ramah himself. That mikra din there is unless it's still warm. Actually, not like the Ramah. We paskin not that way. We're machmir not like the Ramah the way he learns the Ramah, and yesh bishul achar bishul balach. Therefore, you have no room to be samach on the rove. So that's how we go back to the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah that requires that it's all emptied out. It's not enough that's rove yavish, but it has to be all emptied out, and it has to be just a double yavish period. So Ramosha does say the maskana though. He brings a prima gaden that's mekel also like the Minchas Kohen. So once it's already prima gaden, so he says that it's very difficult to be samach on this latchila, but b'diavad or he says b'shas chak gadol. If you have no other choice, then I guess I don't know how you define shas chak gadol. Maybe you have a lot of people and there's no other food, and without this, it's gonna you have all Shabbaton coming up. They're all piling in to eat right now, and everyone is hungry after the game you just played, whatever, and everyone's starving and Shabbos food, and now the only food you have is there's no way to pour the liquid out without the whole thing pouring out or something, with all the meat chunks or meatballs are going to all pour out. There's no way to do it except for to put it on. So then there'll be a shasas chak gadol that you can be samach on this Minchas Kohen, on this prima gaden. That's the sakura of Moshe. So it's good to have that in your back pocket for those shasas chak gadols. Let's skip some more of this stuff because it's going to.
Rav, would the Minchas Kohen they'll only be talking about when there's a small amount of liquid, or is he possibly talking about even when there's a large amount, even when there is a rove?
He says rove. It goes by rove.
So I mean, it's rove yavish. So even according to the Minchas Kohen, we're talking about rove yavish.
Yeah, not even. He's the one that's like he's the he's the one kind of says this kiddush.
I mean. Right, but meaning if he's learning this from the fact that in bishul achar bishul, then wouldn't it be then why is it dafka berov?
Because we are machmir to have at least like even the Ramah, that the way the Chazon learns it, that ein bishul achar bishul, he still requires that it's still warm, because otherwise we have a gzeir drabanan that you might come to think you can cook on Shabbos. So even in the sheet that's makel, we can't just heat up cool liquids, they have an issur d'Rabbanan to do it. The question is it a deraisa d'Rabbanan if you would heat it up? So we're machmir that it's a deraisa, but if you have rove and you have, so then Ramesh is saying shas l'gadol something on that yavish doesn't need to still be warm to heat it up. So then we'll say it's batal barov, and so the whole mixture doesn't need to still be warm.
Right.
Okay. Decide if we're going to go into this point or not. Let's skip that. Running out of time. We're still back in Sif Dalet. Okay, one thing we can't skip over is this Lashon Shulchan Aruch by the Meliach Hayashan, by the old, like the super herring. They had this like very salty herring that wasn't edible without washing it off. And the Lashon Shulchan Aruch is Hadachasan. It comes from the Gemara actually. Hadachasan hi Gemar Malachtan. It's a Gemar Malacha. When you wash it off, it's Gemar Malacha. So that Lashon Gemar Malacha in other parts of the Shabbos is referring to Makav Patish. That's the standard way to say Makav Patish. It's Gemar Malacha, Gemar Malachtan. Mishnah Berurah, though, in Sivkat Lamed Vav was misaken this and said that Zeu Gemar Malachtan v'Havei Bishul. He puts in, he shtups in that Gemar Malacha means it is Bishul. So he's taking it, making it Lav Dafka. He says even though the chiddush of this will be that even though we're talking about a klisheni, you're washing it off, you're putting this very salty herring in a klisheni, which generally is not mavashal, and then it will be more, since the klal is klisheni and mavashal, it'd be more mustaber if you're chayav for anything that is not bishul, it's going to be something else, and maybe the lashon gemar malachtan is dafka that's referring to makav patish, and maybe we don't have the same klolim of makav patish as we have for bishul. Even maybe you could do makav patish even in a klisheni as long as it gets the job done and turns it into a meichel who wasn't before. But Mr. Berurah is going that he's holding that it's not shayach makav patish by ochlin at all. That's what he explains in the Bir Halacha, that so it's going to be so kamash malan. The chiddush is that there is a type of bishul that could also be klisheni, and we'll see soon in a minute. We'll talk about another very very matzui dika case of klisheni that might be mivashal. So, but so the even though the heat of a klisheni is generally not mivashal things, but when what needs to be done over here is not to be a regular bishul, but it needs to be just to really soak off this salt in a way that makes it into something which is roy lachila, and it's not, and it won't work. It won't accomplish the same thing if you put it into tzorin, put it into cold water. So the fact that it's still hot and the heat came from fire to begin with, so then it's still within the getter of malachas bishul. That's the chiddush of this halacha according to Mishnah Berurah. The Bir Halacha, he's marich against the Pri Megadim. Pri Megadim and the Nishmas Adam, they learn that it is makav patish. And they hold the mamela. They hold that it's lav dafka cham. Even in bitzonin it'll be aser. If you put it in cold water, there's no chilik in makav patish between hot and cold. Just whatever will accomplish the goal. So if you leave it long enough in cold water, it'll make it edible. Then it's makav patish. So the Bir Halacha goes against them because he holds if that would be true. So then why is it mutter to put it in? Let's say, why are you allowed to put food that's not edible right now? You're allowed to put it in chama. You can put it into the sunlight and let it heat up by the sun. Or ba'avak drachim, you can put it into the sand that's heated up by the sun. You know, as long as it's cold when you put it there and then heats up as it goes along, you're allowed to do that also. He brings other. Why would they be okay if it's makav patish? So then it should be. It doesn't matter if it's heat from fire at all. It could just be even heat from the sun. The cook said it should be up. It should be also mitzvah makav patish. Brings other eyes as well, and he says also it's also his medayik from Rashi and Daf Lamates. Rashi's it's not even a diuk. Rashi Lahedya says when it says over there that Mishum Gemar Malachta, Rashi says bishul. So Mishnah Berurah is going with that Rashi, and the Rambam also says that it's bishul. So he says that, and therefore there's no problem. So nafkamina will be between Mishnah Berurah and the Pri Megadim and the Chayoron, the same makav patish. Mishnah Berurah to say that it's only bishul, not makav patish, because ein makav patish ba'oichlin. We don't say by foods. Preparing food is never makav patish. And nafkamina will be, could I put this herring into cold water? So according to the Chayoron and Pri Megadim, then you cannot put it in cold water if that will make it edible, because that would be makav patish. According to Mishnah Berurah, you could put it in cold water because the problem is not makav patish is bishul. There's no bishul with cold water, so therefore it would be okay to put it in cold water. So Mishnah Berurah bets in this machlok is really saying a big kula. Okay, I'm going to go on to another point. In end of Sif Daled. So we have this famous Mishnah Berurah speaks by Richas here and on how to properly make tea for Shabbos. First, he brings rayas that to cook tea is in a bishul deraisa, even though it was dried or whatever. Now, but to cook it is for the first time is an isser full isser deraisa, and that's pasha or all the poskim, and also and to pour on it. Put it on the fire for sure. Isser bishul. To pour on it from a kli rishon is also a full isser bishul midiraisa. So how do you prepare the tea? What's the eitzah? So Mishnah Berurah has a couple different eitzahs, and it's a quite lamed tes here by Richos. I'm sorry, lamed tes. So okay, so he has a couple eitzahs. The first one would be to pour on it from a kli rishon on erev Shabbos. Pour in the water straight from a kli rishon right onto the, in the tea in a vessel, whatever, and mix it around up and down, so it'll cook it. And as you're pouring it, so we say that the irui kli rishon is mavashal kadei klipa, and it could be that the whole tea leaf is only kadei klipa. So once you pour it like that and you move it around, then it will be considered, and then you take it out, you pour out the essence of it. The essence will be all the tea that's there now, pour that out, and just nothing but the leaves are left. And they dry up now until Shabbos. So then it will be mutter to pour onto it from a kli rishon again, because you want to properly make the tea on Shabbos. So once there was already this bashal by iri kli rishon, then to do another iri kli rishon really is mikra din is not a problem. And once you pour the boiling water from a kli rishon onto it on Shabbos, which it's a davar yavesh that was already mavushal, and now you can to recook it is okay. So then you could also pour the essence back into it also, because even though the essence now is cooled down, we paskin that you're allowed to even liquid which cooled down, you're allowed to put it into a kli rishon on Shabbos. You just can't put it on the fire, but you can put it on a kli rishon. For that, we do say you're allowed to do kli rishon that's off the fire. And here it's a kli sheni. I'm sorry, not a kli rishon, a kli sheni. So now this once you poured it into and the pouring the water from kli rishon into the cup, now the cup is a kli sheni, and even though it's very hot, you're still allowed to pour the tea essence into that, because you're allowed to put lach and his bashal into a kli sheni on Shabbos. That's what we pass in. Okay, so that's now Agavorche. Here's one of the places where Mishnah Berurah speaks out what would be the din b'diavad if you did put that essence back in a kli rishon, or best even on the fire. So b'diavad you can still drink that, because like we always say, that we said before, you can mitzaref dasa rashba that there is no bishul achar dasa rashba in the Ran. There's no bishul achar bishul even by lach. So l'chatchilu we're makbid, but b'diavad if it happened, you can still drink it, because it will be some on those shitas b'diavad. Okay, so that's the first eitzah of the Mishnah Berurah, is to pour the boiling water onto the leaves before Shabbos, pour off the essence, let the leaves dry out a little bit, and then you can pour boiling water on them again on Shabbos. In the Sharat Sion, Samach Gimel is marach to show that there are a number of problems with this Eitzah. That there's a Pri Megadim that's choshesh by that even something that's mushal klei klipa, even though the whole thing is only a klipa, maybe there's still klipas that weren't cooked yet. There's still like thin layers that weren't cooked yet, because the question is how thin is the klei klipa? Was it all really cooked or not? And also perhaps there's also a shita that holds that as long as the tea is still brings out more and more flavor, then it shows that there's still more bishul to be done in those tea leaves. There's a shita like that, and there's another shita also that holds that since the irui is only mavashal kadei klipa, that's not called the irui is not called bishul gomer. That's why it's not only mavashal kadei klipa. It's not bishul gomer. So but there are more levels of cooking to be done. Then maybe you'll hit those levels when you pour the boiling water over it also. So even though he's matir in the Mishnah Berurah, he's saying that there are some issues with this heter. So he says even though you can't be mocha someone who does this because they have al malis moch, there's a better eitzah. And the better eitzah is, he says, the second eitzah is to totally cook the essence, prepare everything before Shabbos, totally cook it before Shabbos, and pour out just the essence, and don't use the tea leaves anymore at all on Shabbos. Just pour boiling water into a kli sheni and pour the essence in there. Then there's no problem whatsoever. And he says, and don't be worried about saveya, even though you're coloring the water when you pour the essence into it, because ain't tzviya ba'ochlin. And that's the machlokes of poskim we're not going to go to now, whether you have tzviya ba'ochlin by water or not. Generally, ain't tzviya ba'ochlin. Generally, you put ketchup on your hamburger on Shabbos, even though you're painting it red. There's no problem with saveya on Shabbos of tzviya ba'ochlin, but and everyone agrees to that. But there are some poskim that hold that water, since water is something which you use to make paint in, and we do color water all the time, even when it's not for food. So maybe there's a chash tzviya ba'ochlin by water. There are poskim like that, but Mishnah Berurah says that's not an issue. So that's the second eitzah in Mishnah Berurah, and he holds that's the best eitzah of all, not to use the tea leaves at all on Shabbos. Now there's a third eitzah in Rav Moshe, a very famous tshuva for Rav Moshe, very well-known tshuva. It's in Chelik Daled, Siman Ayin Daled, in Bishul Ois Tesvav. Look it up. So he says that the most simple eitzah is to put it into a kli shlishi. To put into a kli shlishi, because kli shlishi, even though kli sheni there are shitas that hold it's still mavashal, kli shlishi everyone agrees is not mavashal. So you see, but the ma'aseh the Aruch HaShulchan beferish asus kli shlishi, and his svara is Aruch HaShulchan says because einenu royas, our eyes see that even when you put it in a kli shlishi, it's still right. It colors, it puts the tea color right and taste right into the water. So einenu royas that it is still misbashal. So Rav Moshe says that einenu royas means nothing, because it says our eyes would see the same thing if you put a tea bag into cold water. If you leave it there long enough, it'll also turn it into like cold brew, whatever. It'll brew it up. So the fact that it'll after a while color the water and give it that taste is not a raya that it's bishul anymore. Maybe the kli shlishi will do the same thing that cold water will do, it'll do it more quickly. But bishul it's not. He brings a raya from melach also. But melach is a shaila whether there's bishul by melach or not by kli shlishi. And so it says we know for sure there is no bishul melach kli shlishi, even though when you put it into a kli shlishi, you mix it around and it makes the water very, very, very salty. So the fact that it makes it salty is not a raya there's bishul. Huadin, the fact that it makes the water tea, however you want to say that, then that's also not a raya there's bishul. So that's the heter b'kli shlishi. Now, Lamaisa, Rav Moshe is a das yachid in this. It's a well-known shita. Many people samach on this Rav Moshe, but Lamaisa Rav Moshe is very much a das yachid in this. So I just want to the reason I want to speak out the Mishnah Berurah, even though we're not going to do these eitzes so much, the Mishnah Berurah has all these eitzes over here. The big problem is what to do and how to do it. And so I'll ask you one question, one simple question. Mishnah Berurah is trying so hard to find an eitzah of how we could use these tea bags, and he really found no eitzah. He really found no way to do this. Like pouring the water over it, don't do it again. It's going to be from even cliché is a problem with because the problem with tea, the reason tea is different than anything else, comes from the fact that where choshesh, the tea is in the category of things that are called kali lebashel, kali abishal, and we bring there's a riot to this yisod from well, we'll have to see what the makor of this is, but one of the makoros could be not the Torah not putting bread into a klisheni, because even though klisheni and vashel baked bread is very soft, and the Dorim Rakim are called in the vashel. We have different questions of where the yisod comes from. In the Maisa, we have a yisod called Kali Abishal, Dorim Rakim or Kali Abishal, the easy vashel, and so we for sure take on the vashel klisheni. So my question to you is that why can the Mishnah Berurah is trying so hard to find a way to do this, and no, I can't find a way to use the leaves. Really, that's Yotzei Kol Hadayos. So just cook it all before Shabbos, and then just have the essence left, and use that and pour that into the klisheni and the hot klisheni. Why didn't the Mishnah Berurah just say klish lishi? Why didn't he think of that? He tried so hard, he couldn't think of klish lishi. I think you see clearly from Mishnah Berurah that would not be an eitzah either. The same way he said klisheni, where we say it's bishul because it's kali bishul, it's varim rakim kali bishul. Klishlishi will be the same thing. If it's really hot water, especially the Chazon Ish, the well-known shita of Chazon Ish is that when it's yad nichves bo, if it's hot enough that your finger could be scalded in it, then there is no kula of klishlishi at all. That's mamish vashal like klisheni is. So whether we hold that to Chazon Ish or not, by general bishul by klishlishi, but for sure by dvarim rakim that are kali lebashal, that we have to be cautious for that svara, and which probably Mr. Berurah didn't want him to say that, because to say that it's the difference between yad nichves bo and yad soletis bo, where it's hot enough for your hand to be scalded, or yad soletis bo means you can't leave your hand in it, you pull it out right away because it's too hot to leave your hand in it. That's yad soletis bo. So the difference is very minor between the two, so it just seems clear to me that Mr. Berurah is holding klish lishi is not an eitzah. He didn't give that eitzah. So that would be against Rav Moshe, and the Aruch HaShulchan B'Feres is not like Rav Moshe. Many other poskim, many Achronim. I heard from Shmuel first. Shmuel first is a very stark Talmud of Rav Moshe, and he's somewhat on Rav Moshe for very serious Yisurim when it comes to Bein L'Kula, Bein L'Chumra. He goes everything like Rav Moshe. But he told me, I heard from him that this is one thing he doesn't not go like Rav Moshe, because Rov and poskim all hold that there is a problem with bishul with tea and a klish lishi, and Rav Moshe is really a das yachid. So for that he's machmer not like Rav Moshe, and to not use a tea bag on Shabbos. So the maskana, if you see somebody that's samach on Rav Moshe, definitely don't have to be mocha them because they have Rav Moshe to be samach on, but highly recommended not to do it because Rav Moshe is a das yachid.
Was Rav Moshe trying to give his kula within Shitas the Mishnah Berurah, or I never thought he was trying to stay within the Mishnah Berurah.
Necessarily, but I'm saying that Rav Moshe is big enough to be cholak on the Mishnah Berurah. But it's interesting he doesn't speak out that it's against the Mishnah Berurah. So I don't know if he's kabbalah diuk or not. And Rav Moshe is willing to be cholak at times on the Mishnah Berurah, but he doesn't do it bakal. He wouldn't just do it like halacha. It's interesting that without even mentioning it. These tshuvas that he wrote, that particular tshuvas, those were they added later to Igros Moshe. It was like short tshuvas that he wrote to Shimon Eider. That's all, and they were printed in the back of his Shimon Eider's forum and Shabbos, and then they put it into. So they weren't like regular tshuvas, like long tshuvas that Moshe usually write. But even so, to be cholak on the Mishnah Berurah is a little bit of a pella, and maybe he wasn't like Kabbalah idea in the Mishnah Berurah, you know, for some reason, you know, he wouldn't learn that way in the Mishnah Berurah. I don't know, but to me it seems Pashut that way, and I would ask that to Moshe: Are you meaning to be holding the Mishnah Berurah or not? It's not lahedi in the Mishnah Berurah. It's a diuk. The fact that he didn't bring that Eitzah. So maybe he held that's not really the holding the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah didn't come out and say it, but it's a problem. So
It's hard to read the tshuva, the Mishnah Berurah any other way. I mean, with the whole arichas.
right, why couldn't you have the most Pashut Eitzah in the world right in front of you? Like, just come out and say that, you know. And instead, you're going to cook it all on Erev Shabbos and have the essence, and you know, like, to me, that's the essence of the Mishnah Berurah. Is that Nakuda?
Rob, there's a joke that we used to say about this when I was in yeshiva.
Pardon?
There's a joke that we used to say about this when I was in yeshiva. You had a ben yeshiva walking around with his non-religious friend on Shabbos, and he takes a boiling cup of water and he starts pouring it on his hand, and his friend says, "You're crazy. What are you doing? It's boiling. Doesn't that hurt you?" He says, "No, it's klishlishi. Don't worry."
Yeah. Yeah. Reminds me of, I don't know if you heard of Rabbi Becher, Mordechai Becher, famous speaker today, but it was not just today, for decades already, from Australia, thick Australian accent. He was actually my roommate in Shiva, and his son now is in our kollel in Dallas. So full circle. But he tells a story that he went to a Shabbaton and someplace, and the people whoever set it up didn't think it through so well, and he was like on like the 16th floor or something of this hotel, and some obvious problem. So, and he had the guy at the desk was supposed to open the door with the key, you know, the electronic key. So it came time to go up to the rooms. He went to the desk, and the guy said, "Okay, sure." And the guy walked over to the elevator and said, and opened the elevator. "Okay, come on, sir." He said, "It's all right. I'll walk." He said, "Okay, I'll see you there." So he's trudging up 16 flights, and he gets up there, and he's all sweaty and out of breath and everything. And then the guy is standing at the door, you know, all rested and looking at the guy like he's crazy. And he said, you know, he opens the door for him and says, "Sir, can I ask you a personal question?" He says, "Sure." He said, "Why did you walk? Why didn't you take the elevator?" He said, "It's my day of rest." Okay. We Jews are crazy people, you know, like the holiest day of the year, we put on our gym shoes, you know, like we do things that are okay. Can move you along here. Just one last point I want to speak out before leaving this is, what about instant coffee? So that will go with Rav Moshe in the same place in Os Tes Zion. So he's matir. A writer asked him, the Chora has a din. All the coffee was cooked before, and then it was you know, it was dried up, and that's why you end up the powder. Powder is just the leftover of that. But Betzim, Chora a davar mevushal already. It's on mevushal and Erev Shabbos, and bishul achar bishul, and that's where Moshe takes on the halacha. It's ein bishul achar bishul b'yavesh, and since the coffee was dried afterwards, and what's left is dry powder. That dry powder is called, even though it's the leftovers of a liquid thing, but now once it's dried, it's dry. So therefore, it's mutter maker din. You can put it into a kli rishon because ein bishul achar bishul. So he says that he himself is noeg bebeso. He's machmir himself, and he has an haga, Rav Moshe writes, in his own house, never to put anything but a kli shlishi, because you just never know if you do this, and the people in the house might make a mistake. So in haga in his house, everything goes in a kli shlishi, even if it's mutter. So that he does la'atzmoi in order that shouldn't make mistakes, but ladina it's mutter even in a kli rishon. Now there's just an interesting diuk in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says over here you can put the coffee. He says that you can put the coffee in the coffee. You could put where is it? Yeah, when you're talking about the tea and you're putting the tea essence, not talking about coffee, but the tea essence. into a klisheni, then he says you could also then put in the klisheni chalav shenitztanen, milk that was cooled down. So it's mashma from the Shabura that if it was milk that wasn't cool, it was never cooked, you couldn't put it in a klisheni. So would that then be a problem with putting, if you put your instant coffee in a klisheni, that would just be the urn is a kli rishon. You fill up your cup, that the cup's now klisheni, and you make the coffee in there, which I personally also I do. Or once Moshe said it, I do it also. I do it always in a klisheni. I don't really have to, but I do. So I'll tell you another reason why it's Kedai B'Machmal Moshe in a second. But first, with the milk thing, so Mishnah Berurah says that milk wasn't heated yet, and it's like Hila Mishnah Berurah saying, okay, milk that was heated and cooled down. So then we have another sheet to be Samachan that ain't Bishal Bishal by Lach. So then we can put it in a klisheni. Mashma, if it wasn't, then it'd be a problem. So can we put milk in our coffee in a klisheni, right, based on that Mishnah Berurah? So the answer is that it's a machlokas, but if pasteurization is considered mavushal or not, when the milk is all pasteurized, Rabbi Yashu is machmer, but Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Weiss both hold that, at least this, the pasteurization is considered already cooked, and therefore the milk that we have today is all pasteurized. You could put it into your cup klisheni, even though Rabbi Yashiv was machmer to always, since he held it, it's not. They want to use milk on Shabbos, so he was machmer to have all the milk that's going to be used on Shabbos cooked before Shabbos, and then cooled down, put back in the fridge, so you can put it into the coffee. That was Rabbi Yosef's. But according to Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Weiss, Minchas Yitzchak, it's okay just to be samach on the pasteurization. To there's a few different sirufim over it. Maybe pasteurization is cooking, even if it's not. Klisheni and nivashal. There's a few things to be samach on over here. L'maisa, we can be samach on that. It's the Rav Shlomo Zalman. He's samach on it for this because I guess other tzirufim, even though Rav Shlomo Zalman was and Rabbi Yoshev agreed to each other that the wine which is pasteurized is not considered yain mavushal for touching a goy touching it, because they both hold that the pasteurization needs to be the cooking in order to be yain mavushal. It has to have a shinui in the tam hayayin, has to change the wine in some degree. So the pasteurization that doesn't do that is not considered yain mavushal. It's just but so that's the Gava Yain Wushal, even though that's only a Drabanan. Here, Rav Shlomo Zalman, he's being Makel, which is interesting. And here it's even would seem to be a little more Chamor than Yain. Here he's Makel. So we have what to be Samachan. That's, however, that's for our regular instant coffee. When you have Turkish coffee, so the post going to say that the Turkish coffee is actually was never cooked before. They take the beans and they crush them up. It's made a whole different process, and you actually still have coffee beans that were like dry roasted in order to be able to be crushed up and be coffee beans to crush up, but they were never cooked. It wasn't like a cooking process that they just took off the powder. That's why all that stuff stays in the bottom. In Israel, they used to call, when I was a bachar, they would call it kafeh butz, like mud coffee, because like mud, goes to the bottom. And there's it's a little bit rises to the top, the kafeh butz. And it's really the ground up roasted crystals and roasted beans. And since even if it's considered roasted, then we're going to come to sifhei in a second, which we're machmer to say yesh bishal achar afia or achar tzli. So maybe the roasting is considered tzli, it's considered roasting and not considered bishal. So yesh bishal achar tzli. So it's a big problem to put that even in a klisheni on Shabbos, because since the poskim being a raya, I think it would have been Sian Avashol in his Chuvas brings a raya that if you would put that into a cold water, it would not work. Even if you leave it all day, it still would not be good. By the kafeh butz, by the Turkish coffee, it still wouldn't be good. Unlike the tea that maybe you could have cold, cold brewed tea or cold brewed coffee from, but that kind of coffee just doesn't brew cold. It stays. It'll be disgusting. You don't put actual hot water. So you see that the hot water makes it roy l'shtia, without that it wouldn't be, which would be similar like we said about the herring that makes it roy l'achila and it's bishul even though it's in a klisheni. Here also would be the same thing, and it was never before, So that's a problem. So that's another reason, maybe, especially if you're Israeli and you have some Turkish coffee in your house, to be machmir or always to put it in the kli shlishi, even regular coffee, because you might mix up and put. People might think, oh, I could put this, and I see it. We've seen it in our shul many times that there's. I probably like to just take it out of the shul. There's Turkish coffee there on Shabbos, and people could mistakenly put it in a klisheni that could be over bishul deraisa. Your door list. Remember to take the cafe butts out of the shul.
How did you know I had something to say, Rabbi?
Pardon?
So there's a svara A that by Maran, there's no bishul achar kilui, achar kliya. So that's what we're somech on. And then there's another kula that, so a lot of poskim say that it's not edible as it is, but we hold that it is edible as it is, because in the Israeli tradition in Yeshivat Porat Yosef, as a treat, they used to give them some ground coffee in their hand with a little bit of sugar, and that was like their treat. They would eat it, you know. So actually, it is roy lachila, and it no kliya, no bishul achal kliya. So that's what we're making.
So Ben Zion Abba Shaul says that he is kosher for Nisa Deraisa. So it's
Yeah, the Rabbi Ovadia Yosef and his sons, they are making.
and also Nisim Karelitz, they both say that it's shashis. So I guess if somebody wants to do it at their own house, I'm going to go. I won't go to the house and knock on the door, but have it in the shul after. Two of the Gedolei Poskim say it's my shashis deraisa. Let him could die. Okay. Wow. I was just getting that done quickly to start going weiter, but I think we're gonna have to maybe have a makeup here just to make up for what's in between, because we're just getting started. I mean, there's not that much more after we'll talk about. Maybe we'll try to quickly just speak at a few points. Maybe I'll just very quickly. Sifhei, the Torah brings the Sefer Yereyan, the Lezer Mitz, the Yesh Bishal Achar Afia and Sli, and his raya was from matzah. That we say that you're yotze with the matzah that's soaked, but if it's mevushal, then you're not yotze that matzah anymore. It's paka the shem matzah from it, and so the Yereyan wants to learn from there a raya that if it was the Yesh Bishal Achar Afia, that the bishul is mafkia, that it being a davar afui, it's no longer considered afui, it's considered now vushal, and that's why it's possible to be a matzah. Those that are cholik on that hold that it's not a raya, because there's a separate svora by matzah. You need tam matzah v'leka, and the bishul, even though by other things it wouldn't be, they bring a raya from Yerakos. The fact that if you cook vegetables, so if it would be mafkia what it is, and something else now after the bishul, then you should have to make a shahakol on vegetables that are cooked. We paskin that shlakos, cooked vegetables, is still nekadama. So you see that the cooking leaves it as what it was. So generally, if you would cook some kind of bread, whatever, it would be okay. It would still be on motzi. If you cook a loaf of bread and it stays intact, then maybe it would still be on motzi. But just for matzah, you're not yotze, because it's missing the tam matzah once it's mevushal. There's other rayas we're not going to go into right now into this. But the Maisa, the Shulchan Aruch is over here. I mean, he's telling me that. Let me see Lashon Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, I mean, what Dora was saying before, that it's a. I guess there's room to say that the Shulchan Aruch doesn't hold that way, because the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring it as a psak. He starts Yesh Nisha Omer, which he doesn't say Yesh Omer, he says Yesh Nisha Omer, and probably the reason for that is, one reason could be that because it's not mefurish in the Gemara. This all is all mechudesh in the Rishonim, and often the Shulchan Aruch will say, even if nobody's cholik on it, he'll say Yesh Nisha Omer. So it's a chiddush of the Yereyan, the Lozer Mitz, but it's not mefurish in the Gemara, so he says Yesh Nisha Omer. But then he also says Yesh Matirin. There are those that are matir, and the general klal with the Shulchan Aruch is when he says yesh v'yesh, then the halach is like the second one. So perhaps there's room to say that Shulchan Aruch passing that way. not that way. And the Ramah puts a caveat and says the yesh matirim is only for kli sheni. But then he says the yesh mat. He said, but then yesh makilim also afilu kli rishon. So the Ramah ends off and nogim lizar l'chatchila shalolitin pas afilu b'kli sheni al calls man sheyatzel letisbo, not to even put bread in a kli sheni as long as it's not yatzel letisbo. And so the question is, what will be a so that according to this, that's when Mishnah Berurah speaks out that according to the yesh machmirim of the Ramah, then you should not put like crumble up bread or matzah even into your soup, into a kli sheni. The soup is a kli sheni. The fact that we often do that, so there's a tshuva from Minchas Yitzchak. I'm going to bring it down here anywhere. I don't see it here anywhere, but there's a tshuva from Minchas Yitzchak says the following kiddush that you could be makel. There is a Mishnah Berurah, not here, but somewhere else. I don't know where it is. I have to look for it. That if you have soup in the bowl and you took a ladle and you put the ladle from the ladle to the soup bowl, so now the soup bowl is a kli shlishi, not a kli sheni anymore. And that's why we're makel to put, break up matzah, whatever, or bread into our soup. It's not a problem because even if you're machmir to have bishul achar afiyah, that's only going to be kli sheni, this mavasha, kli shlishi, that we mutter our bosha. The only shallow we had was with tea, but with bread to put it into, that's not a problem. But the problem with that hetzer l'chora is, and this, they ask this, it's a steer in the Mishnah Berurah, seems to be the Mishnah Berurah's makel to be mitzaref that the ladle is a kli sheni and the bowl is a kli shlishi. Problem is the Mishnah Berurah in other places says that a ladle, once it sits in the soup for a few seconds, it gets as hot as the pot, then the ladle itself is considered a kli rishon, not a kli sheni. So then it would be, then the bowl would then be a kli sheni, not a kli shlishi. And but it's matter to put the bread in a kli shlishi. So Rav Weiss explains that in Minchas Yitzchak, I didn't see this now, I saw this many years ago, I don't see anybody bring it down now, but he says that, says a chiddush that there is a machlokas whether the ladle is considered rishon or sheni. Because was the food, the what do you call it? The soup wasn't actually cooked in the ladle; it was cooked in the pot, and the ladle was just put in there, and it was heated up. But so the Mishnah Berurah is machmir. The ladle is considered a kli rishon on its own right. So if to put something into the ladle, then it will be machmir. It's a kli rishon. But once you put it into another kli, so then now it's already a kli sheni, which according to Moshe, kli sheni is not mavashal. So then we're once it goes into the next kli, then we're mitzaref the shitas that hold that a ladle is not a kli rishon to consider that a kli shlishi. That's the sort of that's the cheshbon that he makes. So that's why it's okay to put bread or whatever into your soup when it's in a kli shlishi, when it's already past the ladle. Okay, just another just end off here with an interesting point that the Mishnah Berurah says because of this kumrah not to put in the marak of the cholent, not to put bread into the marak of the cholent. So the l'chora we're talking about the cholent is even in a kli sheni. In other words, you have cholent with its liquid, and you want to put bread into that, or you pour even liquid off of it. So he says not to put the bread into there. And it could be the part of the chumrah of that is because it's a davar gush. Davar gush, the Mishnah Berurah brings down, is a problem with davar gush is a solid piece. There's a big question in your idea, in the sugi of davar gush in your idea, how big does it need to be to consider davar gush? But for sure, a chunk of potatoes, like in the cholent, that would be a davar gush, and that doesn't. In the davar, so the svara davar gush is that it retains its heat even if it goes down to another level of kli. So going from kli rishon to kli sheni, then the davar gush is still considered kli rishon, not kli sheni, and that's a machlokas or machmer that way. So I'll just tell. There's a question, and it's brought down. They bring from Shlomo Zalman that he paskin. Let's say you have, a normal case, you have the challah on Shabbos cut, and you put challah on your plate, you eat some challah, and now they serve the cholent. So you still have some crumbs of the challah on your plate. So do you need to be machmir to knock off the crumbs on the plate before you put the cholent down? Because the Mishnah Berurah says not to put bread into the cholent, davar gush, and maybe it's kli rishon still, or at least kli sheni, or machmir not to put bread in the soup that's a kli sheni, or only make up by kli shlishi. So if you're going to put the cholent on top of the crumbs, are you worried that you're going to cook those crumbs?
And do borer?
Huh? Or no, you have your plate, you have an empty plate with just crumbs on it, so you just want to you need to knock the crumbs off first. So they see bring down the deer shoe it's brought down in different form from Shem Zaman that hill is not a problem. You have a few tzirufim over here, maybe he says with tziruf that maybe ein bishalach hartzli, that's a machlokas on our sif, and then another machlokas whether the davar gush is still considered kli rishon or not, or even kli sheni, or maybe now we're putting it from the ladle to there. Maybe it's like irui kli sheni, which is less than kli sheni. So, but tziruf that it's a snack steka, so you don't have to be machmir to take it off. So I'll just tell you, I myself had a mice with Shlomo Zalman that I was discussing. We're driving in the car. I was discussing this with him, and I mentioned to him that I always knock off my crumbs before I put the cholent on. So he looked at me and he said, "You probably have often have Bali Tshuva coming to your house for, like or some app, whatever." I don't know how he knew that, but I actually did. So coming for Shabbos, and I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "So they look at you and they think whatever you do, that's the halacha, and so you have absolutely no reason to knock your crumbs off your plate." He didn't tell me the other tzirufim of the two shitas, whatever. He said, "You don't care about those crumbs. You're not trying to cook those crumbs. That's not suras bishul at all. And all you're going to do is going to drive them crazy and think that you have to start brushing off all the crumbs on their plate. So like, don't worry about it." That was basically what he told me. Okay, there's a few more things to talk about, but hour is late, so I guess we'll hold it here. And have a great Shabbos, and Mitzvah Hashem, at least some of you will be seeing soon, Mitzvah Hashem.
Shabbos, Chodesh.
Shabbos Good Chodesh, Kol Tov.
Shabbos Good Chodesh.
Shabbos Chodesh.